The morning sun filtered through the massive glass dome of the Galactic Defense Academy. Han stood in formation with 200 other recruits from across the known galaxy. His human frame looked small next to the towering warriors and the thick-skinned reptilian soldiers, but stood straight, his eyes forward, his breathing calm. Drill Sergeant paced in front of them. The warrior was 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that had earned scars from 100 battles. His yellow eyes scanned the formation with disgust. He stopped in front of the human section. 20 humans stood there, including N. Pathetic, hissed. His voice carried across the training field. Look at these soft creatures. Pink skin that tears like paper, weak bones that break from simple falls, and they think they can be soldiers. Some of the alien recruits laughed, kept his face neutral. He had heard worse during his years as an endurance athlete on Earth. Words were just air. Continued his speech. Today I will tell you about the Gauntlet. It is the hardest test in this academy, perhaps the hardest test in the entire galaxy. He activated a holographic display. Images of a massive training facility appeared in the air. 72 hours of continuous trials, no sleep, no mercy, no second chances. The hologram showed different chambers, one filled with swirling toxic mist, another with combat drones in zero gravity, a dark chamber that seemed to swallow light itself. Studied each image carefully. In 300 years, said, only 12 beings have completed the Gauntlet. 12 warriors out of hundreds of thousands who tried. Most quit in the first day. Many are carried out unconscious. Some never fully recover. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. It breaks the strong. It destroys the weak. Glanced at from the corner of her eye. She had trained with him on Earth. She knew that look on his face. He was interested. Walked directly to the human section. This test is impossible for your kind. You are too fragile, too soft. Your pain tolerance is low. Your endurance is weak. I am giving you humans a chance right now. Step forward if you want to withdraw from the academy. No shame. Your species simply is not built for war. Silence filled the field. The alien recruits watched the humans, waiting for them to break formation, to step forward, to quit. Instead, raised his hand. His eyes narrowed. What? Drill Sergeant said clearly, I volunteer to attempt the Gauntlet. The training field exploded with noise. Alien recruits laughed, clicked, and buzzed in their various languages. Some shook their heads. Others made sounds that resembled mockery in any language. Stared at for a long moment. You volunteer. You think this is a game, human? No, Drill Sergeant replied. His voice was calm. A small smile touched his lips. I think it is a challenge. A challenge you will fail, said. He moved closer until his massive head was inches from his face. You will scream. You will cry. You will beg to quit. And I will remember this moment when they carry your broken body out of that facility. Smile widened just a bit. Perhaps, Drill Sergeant, or perhaps I will remember this moment when I walk out on my own feet. The laughter from the alien recruits grew louder. Even some of the instructors shook their heads, looked worried, looked concerned but not surprised. She knew better than anyone here. Pulled back. Very well, human, you want to try. You will try tomorrow morning, 0600 hours. The whole academy will watch you fail. He turned to address all the recruits. Let this be a lesson to everyone. Confidence without ability is just stupidity. This human has volunteered to demonstrate that lesson with his suffering. The formation was dismissed. As recruits scattered to their duties, several aliens approached. A massive warrior from the species, covered in rock-like armor, laughed. Enjoy your last comfortable night, soft skin. Tomorrow you learn what real pain feels like. Just nodded politely. We will see. That evening, sat in the human quarters with another human recruit who worked in the engineering section had joined them. She pulled up data on her tablet. I accessed the Gauntlet records, said. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. 12 completions in 300 years. That is a success rate of 0.004%. The average attempt lasts 11 hours. The longest failure was 48 hours. Shook his head. This is crazy. You could get seriously hurt, permanent damage. Why volunteer? Was stretching on the floor, preparing his body. Because said it was impossible for humans. Because everyone thinks we are weak. Because I want to know if I can do it. And if you cannot, asked. She was not arguing, just asking. She knew would do this regardless. Then I fail trying, said simply. But I will not quit. That is the difference. They think we break easily. Let me show them how hard it is to break a human who decides not to break. Looked at the data again. The pain levels recorded are extreme. The psychological trials are designed to exploit fear and despair. The physical demands exceed what most species can handle. Stopped stretching and stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the training facility. Somewhere in that complex of buildings was the Gauntlet. Tomorrow he would enter it. Do you know what I learned running ultramarathons on Earth? Asked. Pain is just information. It tells you something hurts, but it does not force you to stop. That is a choice. I choose not to stop. The aliens do not understand humans yet, said. She stood next to him at the window. They see our soft skin and think we are soft inside too. They do not know about persistence hunting. They do not know about Earth's gravity. They do not know what humans do when someone tells them something is impossible. Smiled, that same calm smile he had shown. Tomorrow they learn, and I will smile the whole time. That will scare them more than any amount of strength. Sighed, you are insane. Maybe, agreed, but I am insane in a very human way. The night passed slowly, slept well. He had learned long ago that worrying about tomorrow stole peace from today. When his alarm sounded at 0500 hours, he woke feeling rested. He ate a careful breakfast. He hydrated properly. He stretched and prepared his mind. At 0545, he walked toward the Gauntlet facility. Word had spread through the academy. Hundreds of recruits and instructors lined the path. They watched him walk past. Some laughed. Some looked curious. Most looked certain they would see him fail. Waited at the entrance. Behind him stood Commander, the overseer of the academy. The commander's multiple eyes studied with scientific interest. Last chance to withdraw, human said. This is not cowardice. This is common sense. Looked up at the massive drill sergeant. His smile was calm and genuine. Drill sergeant, I am ready to begin. Shook his head slowly. Impossible. You will not complete this, but you will learn a valuable lesson about your limitations. Yes, drill sergeant said. Someone will learn a lesson today. The facility doors opened. Walked inside. The doors closed behind him with a heavy sound of finality. Above, monitors activated. The entire academy could watch his attempt. They could watch him break. In the control room, took her station at the monitoring equipment. She would track every vital sign, every moment of his attempt, and stood with other human recruits, watching the screens. His voice came through the speakers. The gauntlet begins now. 72 hours. The galaxy is watching, human. Try not to disappoint too quickly. Looked up at the camera and smiled. Then he stepped forward into the first chamber, and the test began. The first chamber was designed for combat. Entered a large spherical room where gravity did not exist. He floated in the center as panels in the walls opened. Combat drones emerged, 6 of them, each armed with pain inducement weapons. The rules were simple. Survive and disable all drones. There was no time limit, but there would be no rest. Pushed off from the center, using the zero-gravity environment to move. The drones opened fire immediately. Blue bolts of energy hit his shoulder, his leg, his back. Each hit sent waves of burning pain through his nervous system. The weapons were designed not to injure, only to hurt. In the control room, watched the pain indicators on her screen spike into red zones. His neural receptors are going crazy, she said. That is more pain than most species can handle while staying conscious. On the monitors, grimaced but kept moving. He reached the wall and pushed off again, angling toward the first drone. It fired 3 times, hitting him each time. His body jerked with each impact, but his trajectory did not change. He reached the drone and grabbed it, using his momentum to smash it against the wall. The drone sparked and went dark. 5 drones left. This went on for an hour, was hit 73 times. Each hit registered on the medical monitors as severe pain, but he moved like someone who had accepted pain as a constant companion. He did not waste energy trying to avoid every shot. He accepted some hits to position himself for better attacks. One by one, the drones fell. When the last drone was destroyed, floated in the center of the chamber, breathing hard. His skin showed red marks where the energy bolts had hit. He had been in the gauntlet for 1 hour and 12 minutes. Gravity returned suddenly, fell to the floor, landing hard. A door opened in the wall. He stood up slowly and walked through it. The second chamber was the caustic mist room. Walls of glass contained a space filled with green-gray fog. The mist was designed to irritate skin and respiratory systems. It would not cause permanent damage, but it would burn. It would hurt, and there was no way to avoid it. Entered the chamber. The door sealed behind him. Immediately, the mist touched his exposed skin. It felt like being covered in stinging insects. His eyes watered. His throat burned when he breathed. The medical monitors showed his pain levels climbing again. He was supposed to stay in this chamber for 6 hours. No task to complete, just endure. In the viewing areas, alien recruits watched. "Look at him shake," one said. "Humans cannot handle this. He will quit soon." But did not quit. He controlled his breathing, taking shallow breaths through his nose. He found a rhythm. He thought about his training on Earth, running 100-mile races through deserts and mountains. He had learned to separate his mind from his body's complaints. Pain was just sensation. Sensation could be observed without surrendering to it. 2 hours passed, then 4. Sat on the floor of the mist chamber, his skin red and irritated, his eyes streaming tears from the chemicals. But he was calm. He was breathing steadily. He was enduring. Watched the monitors with growing confusion. "Why is he not begging to stop?" the drill sergeant muttered. Commander's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. Curious, very curious. The human appears to have unusual pain processing capabilities. At the 6-hour mark, the mist chamber door opened. Stood up and walked out. His skin looked angry and red, but he was moving normally. He had been in the gauntlet for 7 hours and 18 minutes. He had already outlasted 40% of all previous attempts. The third chamber was a maze, but this was not a normal maze. The walls shifted. The floor sometimes disappeared into pits, and everywhere there were psychological triggers. Sounds designed to cause fear. Images meant to disturb. The maze attacked the mind. Entered and began walking. The walls around him showed images of Earth burning, cities in flames, people dying. His family, his friends, all suffering while he was away at the academy. The sounds of screaming filled the air. In the control room, checked the psychological stress monitors. "This is where most attempts fail," she said quietly. "The fear response becomes overwhelming." Walked through the maze and his face was tight with emotion. The images hurt worse than the pain bolts, but he kept walking. He spoke quietly to himself. "Not real, just testing. Not real, just testing." He repeated it like a mantra. The maze threw more at him. Images of his own failures, times he had quit in the past, moments of weakness. The voice of every person who had ever doubted him echoed from the walls. "You will fail. You always fail. You are not strong enough. You are not good enough." Stopped walking. He stood in the center of the shifting maze and closed his eyes. Then he started laughing. It was a quiet laugh at first, then louder. "Nice try," he said to the empty air. "But I have heard worse from my own brain during training runs. You want to break me. You will need to do better than that." He opened his eyes and kept walking. The maze tried different tactics, offered him comfort if he quit, showed him images of rest and safety and home, told him that giving up was the smart choice, the logical choice. Smiled and shook his head. Humans are not always logical. Sometimes we are just stubborn. He found the exit after 8 more hours. When he emerged from the maze, he had been in the Gauntlet for 15 hours and 26 minutes. He had passed the halfway point of the first day. A brief rest station appeared. 10 minutes to drink water and catch his breath. Sat down and took careful sips of water. His hands shook slightly from exhaustion, but his mind was clear. His voice came through a communication speaker. "Can you hear me?" "Yes," he said. His voice was rough from the caustic mist. "The whole academy is watching. The aliens cannot believe you are still going. Why are you smiling?" Looked up at the camera and his smile widened. "Because pain is temporary but pride is forever, and because smiling confuses them. If I look like this is easy, they start to wonder what else humans can do." In the observation room, several alien instructors shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a warrior from the amphibious species, spoke too. "Drill Sergeant, perhaps we have misjudged the humans. This one shows remarkable fortitude." Scales rippled with annoyance. "One human, one test. It proves nothing. Wait until the real challenges begin." But privately was disturbed. He had seen hundreds of recruits attempt the Gauntlet. He had seen the strongest warriors break down crying. He had seen combat veterans quit in shame. This human should have broken by now. The fact that he was smiling was unnatural, wrong. The 10-minute rest ended, stood up and walked toward the next chamber. His body ached everywhere. Burns from the mist, bruises from the combat, mental fatigue from the maze, but his will was unshaken. The next challenge was the endurance platform. A massive treadmill set at a steep incline. Would have to run uphill for hours while the system gradually increased the speed and angle. Most recruits lasted 2 hours before their legs gave out. Stepped onto the platform and began running. The angle increased, the speed increased. His legs burned with lactic acid. His lungs gasped for air. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his still irritated skin. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, his pace never slowed. He had run ultramarathons. He had trained his body to keep moving when his mind screamed to stop. This was just another mile, then another, then another. At 4 hours something changed, began to sing. It was an old Earth military cadence, something he had learned years ago. His voice was rough and off-key, but the rhythm helped him maintain his pace. The alien observers stared in confusion. "Why is he making noise?" one asked. Watching from the human section smiled. "He is singing. Humans do that. It helps us endure." In the control room, pulled up data on her screens. "I am seeing something interesting in his biology," she told through the communicator. "His body is producing massive amounts of endorphins, natural pain killers. The more pain he experiences, the more his body compensates." "Humans evolved to endure," said. "We are persistence hunters. We chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We are built for this." 5 hours on the treadmill, 6 hours. At 7 hours the system finally shut down, had completed the challenge. He stepped off the platform, his legs shaking, and immediately sat down hard on the floor. 24 hours had passed. 1 full day in the Gauntlet, had not slept. He had experienced more pain than most species could handle in a lifetime, and he was still conscious, still moving, still smiling. Stared at the monitors in disbelief. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, easy to break, but this human was still going. Commander made a note on his data pad. "Fascinating. The human persistence is exceeding all predictions. Drill Sergeant, I believe we may need to update our assessment of this species." Said nothing. He just watched the screens as stood up again, ready for the next challenge. The human smile was still there, tired but genuine, and for the first time in his long military career, felt something he had never expected to feel toward a human. Respect. Hour 32 of the Gauntlet brought a new kind of hell. Entered a chamber where the temperature fluctuated wildly. 1 minute it was freezing, cold enough that his breath turned to fog. The next minute it was burning hot, heat that made sweat pour from his body. Back and forth, extreme cold to extreme heat, forcing his body to constantly adapt. Sat in the center of the chamber and focused on his breathing. His body shivered in the cold, then gasped in the heat. But he had trained in extreme environments on Earth. Death Valley heat, Arctic cold. His body knew how to survive both. In the Academy's medical center, Wu, a human, stood with a group of confused alien doctors. They were watching vital signs on their displays. His core temperature regulation is remarkable, one of the alien doctors said. The physician's antennae twitched with confusion. Most species would enter shock from these temperature changes. How is he adapting so quickly? Wu pulled up information on his tablet. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme climate variations. We developed very efficient temperature regulation, sweating for cooling, shivering for warming. Our bodies automatically adjust. But the energy cost must be enormous, another doctor said. It is, Wu agreed. But humans also have excellent energy storage and processing. We can burn fat reserves for days. Trained his body for ultra-endurance events. He probably has lower body fat and higher muscle efficiency than a normal human. The alien doctors watched as endured 2 more hours of temperature torture. When he finally exited that chamber, he had been in the Gauntlet for 34 hours. More than a full day and night without sleep. The next challenge was waiting. The Endurance Forge. This was where 90% of remaining attempts failed. A massive chamber with broken terrain, obstacles, and combat drones, and a 200-pound weight that the recruit had to carry from one end to the other. Looked at the weight. It was a solid block of dense metal. He bent down and lifted it, grunting with the effort. The weight settled on his shoulders. It was heavy, very heavy, but he had carried equipment through mountains on Earth. He knew how to carry heavy loads. He started walking. The terrain was designed to be difficult. Rocks to climb over, gaps to jump across, uneven ground that threatened to twist ankles, and while he carried the weight, combat drones fired pain-inducement rounds at him. The first bolt hit his back, stumbled but did not fall. The weight shifted on his shoulders. He adjusted and kept walking. Another bolt hit his leg, then his arm. The pain was constant now, layered on top of all the other pain from the previous 34 hours. In the observation room had increased the difficulty. More drones, harder terrain. He wanted to see the human break. He needed to see it. But kept walking, step after step. His legs shook. His muscles screamed. Sweat mixed with the burns from the caustic mist. Blood from small cuts where he had scraped against rocks, but he kept moving forward. And then he started singing again. The old Earth cadence echoed through the chamber. His voice was cracked and rough, but the rhythm was there. The aliens watching did not understand the words, but they understood the defiance in his tone. "He is insane," one alien recruit said. "No," replied. She was standing in the viewing area with dozens of other humans. "He is human. We do not break the same way you do." Stood next to her, his medic training making him watch the vital signs carefully. His pain receptors have been firing constantly for over 30 hours. Most species would have passed out from shock, but human brains can compartmentalize pain. We evolved to keep hunting even when injured. Hour 38 was halfway across the Endurance Forge. The weight on his shoulders felt like it had tripled. Every muscle in his body was exhausted. The drone strikes had hit him over 100 times, but he was still moving. Monitoring from the control room, noticed something. His brain activity is showing unusual patterns, high levels of activity in the prefrontal cortex. He is using conscious thought to override his body's distress signals. Wu, who had joined her, nodded. Humans have an unusual ability to push through discomfort by sheer willpower. Our brains can literally tell our bodies to ignore pain and keep functioning. It is not magic. It is evolution. We survived by being too stubborn to die. Heard this through the communication system. He turned to look at the humans in the observation room. Stubborn, he repeated quietly. Perhaps that is the word, not strong, just stubborn. But as he watched climb over another obstacle while carrying 200 pounds and being shot with pain rounds, realized that stubbornness, when taken to this extreme, was its own form of strength. Hour 40 reached the three-quarter mark of the forge. His vision was starting to blur from exhaustion. His body was running on fumes, but his mind was clear, crystal clear. He had reached that state ultra-endurance athletes knew well, the place beyond pain, where the body was suffering but the mind was calm, almost peaceful. He thought about words from the beginning, impossible for your kind. That phrase repeated in his head with every step, impossible, impossible, impossible. Smiled wider, his teeth showed. Not impossible, he said out loud between gasps for air. Just difficult, humans like difficult. The final stretch of the forge was the hardest, a steep incline covered in loose rocks. Carrying the weight up this slope while being shot by drones was designed to be the breaking point, the moment when even the strongest warriors gave up. Started climbing. His feet slipped on the rocks. He fell to one knee, the weight crushing down on his shoulders. A drone shot him in the back. Then another hit his already injured leg. In the viewing areas, some of the human recruits looked away. They could not watch their fellow humans suffer anymore. But kept watching. Get up, she whispered. You are human, we get up. And did. He pushed himself back to his feet. The weight settled on his shoulders again. He took one step, then another. His legs were shaking so badly they could barely support him, but they did support him because he willed them to. Step by step climbed the slope. The drones emptied their ammunition into him. Every shot was agony, but every shot also made him more determined. Pain was fuel now. Suffering was motivation. At hour 42, reached the end of the endurance forge. He dropped the weight and collapsed to his knees. For a moment the alien observers thought he had finally broken, that he would quit now. But put his hands on the ground, pushed himself back up, and walked toward the exit door. His legs wobbled like a newborn animal, but they carried him forward. The academy viewing areas erupted in noise. Some aliens were shouting in disbelief. Others were silent with shock. The human recruits were cheering, many with tears in their eyes. Stood frozen, staring at the monitors. 42 hours. The human had been going for 42 hours straight. No sleep, constant pain, extreme challenges, and he was still moving, still conscious, still smiling that impossible smile. Commander approached. Drill Sergeant, I believe we need to discuss our training protocols for humans. They are clearly more capable than we assessed. More stubborn, corrected, but there was something different in his voice now, something that had not been there before, more stubborn than should be possible. Was given another 10-minute rest period. He sat down and drank water slowly. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the cup. His voice came through the speaker. Your vital signs are critical. Your body is at its limit. The medical team is recommending you withdraw. Looked up at the camera. His face was covered in sweat, burns, and small cuts. His eyes were bloodshot from exhaustion, but they were still bright, still focused. How much time left? 30 hours, said. Then I have 30 hours to finish, replied. Tell the medical team I appreciate their concern, but I did not come this far to quit now. In the Academy's communication center, word was spreading beyond just the training facility. Other military bases were tuning in to watch. Command centers across the galaxy were receiving reports. A human was attempting the impossible gauntlet. and he was succeeding. A human communications officer was fielding calls from multiple species asking about humans. What are they? Where did they come from? How can they endure like this? She answered as best she could, explaining Earth, explaining human evolution, explaining that humans were persistent hunters who evolved to outlast their prey. But even she was shocked by what was accomplishing. The 10 minutes ended, stood up again. His next challenge was waiting, a room filled with sensory overload, bright flashing lights, loud discordant sounds, smells designed to nauseate, all hitting his senses at once while he tried to complete a complex puzzle. Entered the room and immediately felt sick. The lights hurt his tired eyes. The sounds felt like drills in his brain. The smells made his stomach turn, but he walked to the puzzle and started working. His hands fumbled with the pieces. His eyes could barely focus, but he worked slowly, methodically. When he felt like vomiting, he breathed through it. When his head pounded, he ignored it. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. 3 hours later, he completed it. Hour 45 total. He had been in the Gauntlet for nearly 2 full days without sleep. As he exited the sensory overload room, allowed himself a moment of pride. He was past the halfway point. 27 hours remained. His body was damaged. His mind was exhausted, but his will was unbroken. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all the pain and fatigue, he was enjoying this, because he was proving something that needed to be proven, that humans were not weak, not fragile, not soft, that humans were survivors, and when pushed to the edge, they smiled and pushed back. Hour 48 brought something unexpected, was given a choice. A door appeared on the left and a door on the right. A voice spoke through speakers in the ceiling. Left door, immediate medical treatment, food, and 6 hours of sleep. You may then continue the Gauntlet. Right door, proceed directly to the next challenge with no rest. Choose now. Stared at both doors. 6 hours of sleep sounded like paradise. His body was screaming for rest. Every cell in his body begged him to take the left door. He walked through the right door. In the observation room, several alien instructors made sounds of shock. Why? One demanded. Why would he refuse rest? That is illogical. Shook his head, smiling. Because if he stops now, he might not start again. He knows his body. Better to keep moving than to let it stiffen up. Better to stay in the pain than to feel it fresh after rest. Agreed. Also, he is making a point. Humans do not take the easy path when the hard path proves something. The next chamber was filled with water. Not normal water. Thick, viscous liquid that was hard to move through. Had to swim across a distance of 200 meters while the liquid resisted every movement. It was like swimming through honey. He dove in and started swimming. Each stroke took enormous effort. The liquid clung to his arms and legs, fighting his progress. His already exhausted muscles burned with the effort, but he had swum in rough oceans on Earth. He knew how to pace himself in water. Stroke after stroke, meter after meter, the viscous liquid got into his mouth, tasting bitter and chemical. He spit it out and kept swimming. His arms felt like lead weights. His legs could barely kick, but forward progress, no matter how slow, was still progress. 2 hours later, he reached the other side. He pulled himself out of the liquid and collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. 50 hours total. He allowed himself exactly 60 seconds to lie there. Then he stood up and walked to the next challenge. The galaxy was watching now. News of the humans' attempt had spread across multiple systems. In military command centers, generals and admirals watched the feed. In civilian areas, people gathered around screens. The impossible was happening. A human was surviving the Gauntlet. Another human recruit stood with a growing crowd of humans in the viewing area. If completes this, she said quietly, everything changes for us. The other species will have to respect us. When he completes it, corrected. Not if, when I know him, he will finish or die trying. The next challenge was designed to test mental calculation under stress. Entered a room where mathematical problems appeared on screens. He had to solve them while standing on a platform that delivered electric shocks to his feet at random intervals. The shocks were not meant to injure, only to hurt and distract. But after 50 hours of continuous pain, each new shock was added to a mountain of existing agony. Looked at the first problem. His exhausted brain struggled to focus. Numbers swam before his eyes. A shock hit his feet and he jerked, almost falling. He steadied himself and forced his mind to work. He had always been good at math. Numbers made sense. They followed rules. Even when his body was breaking down, his mind could still calculate. He spoke the answer out loud. Correct, next problem. Another shock. His feet were numb now, which somehow made the shocks worse. He solved the second problem, then the third. His brain was running on pure willpower, forcing neurons to fire when they wanted to shut down. 1 hour of this, 2 hours, by the end, had solved 73 problems while being shocked over 200 times. His accuracy rate was 94%. Even in his exhausted state, the human brain could still function at high levels. Hour 53 was approaching the final day of the Gauntlet. 19 hours remained, but the hardest challenge was still ahead, the one that broke even the strongest minds. The Abyss. Before he entered it, he was given another 10-minute rest, sat down and accepted water from an automated dispenser. His hands shook so badly that water spilled down his chin. He did not care. He was so far beyond caring about small indignities. His voice came through the speaker. The whole galaxy is watching you now. Millions of beings. You have already done the impossible. You have already proven that humans can endure. If you stop now, no one would blame you. Looked up at the camera. His smile was tired but still there. I would blame me, and I did not come here to stop at 19 hours remaining. I came here to finish. The Abyss breaks people, warned. It is designed to attack your deepest fears and worst memories. It makes strong warriors cry like children. Then I will cry if I need to, said, but I will cry while still moving forward. The 10 minutes ended, stood up and walked toward the entrance to the Abyss. It was a simple black door. Beyond it was a chamber designed to simulate sensory deprivation while simultaneously filling the mind with nightmares. Watched approach the door. The drill sergeant had been observing for 53 continuous hours. He had not slept either, too transfixed by what he was witnessing. He will break in the Abyss, said, but his voice lacked certainty now. Commander's multifaceted eyes reflected the monitor screens. Perhaps, or perhaps we have underestimated what the human mind can endure. They evolved on a death world, drill sergeant. Perhaps their minds are as resilient as their bodies. Opened the door and stepped into darkness. The door closed behind him. Complete blackness surrounded him. No light, no sound except his own breathing. This was the sensory deprivation part. Then the simulation began. Images formed in the darkness, not on screens but directly in his mind. Neural stimulation that made hallucinations feel absolutely real. Saw Earth burning, cities collapsing, people screaming, his family dying while calling his name. He closed his eyes, but it made no difference. The images were in his brain. Not real, he said out loud. His voice sounded strange in the darkness. Not real, just testing, not real. But the simulation was sophisticated. It knew how to exploit fear. It showed him failing the Gauntlet, showed him being carried out broken and defeated, showed the other humans being rejected from the academy because of his failure. All his fault, all his weakness. His breathing quickened. This hurt worse than the physical pain. This attacked his identity, his purpose, his worth. For a moment he felt himself wavering. Maybe he should quit. Maybe this was too much. Then he got angry. No, he said firmly into the darkness. You do not get to break me with fake images. I know what is real. This is not real. The simulation tried a different approach. It offered him comfort, showed him going home, resting, being safe. All he had to do was give up, just quit, just stop fighting. The simulation made quitting seem reasonable, smart, the logical choice. Laughed, the sound echoed in the dark chamber. Nice try, but humans are not always logical. Sometimes we are just too stubborn to make the smart choice. The simulation showed him his worst memories, real failures from his past, times he had quit, times he had let people down. It made them seem unforgivable, told him he was defined by his failures. Spoke to the darkness like it was a person. Yes, I have failed before. Every human has, but we get back up. That is what we do. We fail, we learn, we try again. You cannot break me by showing me I am imperfect. I already know that. Hour 55, hour 58, hour 60. Sat in the darkness having conversations with his own mind, with the simulation, with himself. He told jokes to the empty air. He recalled happy memories to counter the nightmare images. He sang songs, even though his voice was almost gone. The alien observers watched the neural scans in confusion. His stress levels are high, but not breaking, one technician reported. He is maintaining coherent thought patterns even under extreme psychological pressure. Wu explained to anyone who would listen. Human brains are incredibly adaptable. We evolved to handle complex social situations, to maintain hope in desperate circumstances, to find meaning in suffering. Our minds are built to endure. Hour 62. The simulation tried its final tactic. It went silent. No more images, no more voices, just absolute darkness and silence, the crushing weight of nothingness. Many warriors broke here, unable to handle the void. Sat in the darkness and smiled. Silence, I can do silence. I have run 100-mile races alone in the desert. I know how to be alone with my thoughts. He started telling himself stories, recalling books he had read, movies he had watched, conversations with friends. He filled the void with his own memories, his own thoughts. The simulation could not show him anything worse than his own mind could imagine, and he had already imagined every possible failure and fear during his long endurance races on Earth. Hour 64 had been in the abyss for 11 hours. This was longer than most beings could handle. The sensory deprivation combined with psychological torture was designed to break anyone. But was not breaking. He was tired, he was scared, he was hurt, but he was not broken. He thought about saying the Gauntlet was impossible for humans. He thought about all the alien recruits laughing at him. He thought about proving them wrong, and he smiled in the darkness. 8 hours left, he said to himself. Just 8 more hours, I can do 8 more hours. I have done harder things, I can do this. The simulation must have realized it could not break him because it simply stopped. The darkness remained, but the attacks on his mind ceased, was left alone with his thoughts in the void. And that was fine. He had learned long ago that his own mind was not his enemy, that thoughts were just thoughts, that fears were just feelings. They could not force him to quit. Only he could make that choice, and he chose to continue. Hour 68. 4 hours remained. The door to the abyss opened and light flooded in. Had been in darkness for 14 hours. The sudden light hurt his eyes. He raised a shaking hand to shield them and slowly stood up. His legs almost gave out. 14 hours of sitting in one position had stiffened every muscle, but he forced himself to move. One step, then another. He walked out of the abyss on his own feet. The monitoring room erupted in sound. Alien technicians spoke in rapid, excited tones. Human recruits cheered, had survived the abyss. The challenge that broke most warriors had not broken him. But the gauntlet was not over. For more hours, 4 more challenges. Entered a corridor lined with mirrors, but these were not normal mirrors. They showed distorted versions of himself, weak, failing, broken. It was a final psychological test before the end. looked at his reflection in the regular parts of the mirrors. He looked terrible. His skin was covered in burns, bruises, and cuts. His eyes were bloodshot. His face was gaunt from nearly 3 days without real food or sleep. He looked like someone who had been through hell. He smiled at his reflection. "Still standing," he said. "Still moving, that is enough." He walked past the distorted mirrors without looking at them. They could not hurt him anymore. The abyss had thrown everything at him, and he had survived. These simple illusions were nothing. Hour 69. The next challenge was deceptively simple: climb a wall. The wall was 50 feet high with small handholds. Normally, this would be easy for a trained recruit. But his hands were shaking from exhaustion. His arms had no strength left. His fingers could barely grip. He looked up at the wall and took a deep breath. Then he started climbing. Each handhold was a battle. His fingers kept slipping. His arms screamed in protest. Twice he almost fell, but he kept climbing, inch by inch, foot by foot. In the viewing areas, humans and aliens alike watched in complete silence. Everyone understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. Not just physical endurance, but the absolute refusal of the human spirit to surrender. Reached the top of the wall after 40 minutes. He pulled himself over the edge and lay there for a moment, gasping. Then he stood up and looked for the next challenge. Hour 70. 2 hours remained. The second-to-last challenge was another endurance run. 5 miles on a track while the system gradually reduced oxygen levels, simulating high-altitude running. His lungs were already struggling after 69 hours of continuous stress. The reduced oxygen made every breath inadequate. His vision started to blur. His head felt light. His body begged him to stop. He did not stop. He focused on the rhythm of his feet. Left, right, left, right. One step was all he needed, just one more step, and then another, and another. He had run marathons in the mountains. He knew how to breathe in thin air. Mile 1, Mile 2. His pace was slow now, much slower than when he started the gauntlet, but he was still moving, still putting one foot in front of the other. Mile 3, Mile 4. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. His vision was tunneling. His body was running on fumes and willpower and nothing else. Mile 5. He crossed the finish line and immediately collapsed. For a long moment, everyone watching thought he had finally broken, that he could not continue. But put his palms on the ground and pushed himself up once more. His arms trembled. His whole body shook, but he stood. Hour 71. 1 hour remained. One final challenge between him and completion. Walk to the last chamber. Each step was an act of will. His body had nothing left to give. His mind was floating in a fog of exhaustion, but his spirit, that core of stubborn human determination, was still burning bright. The final challenge was waiting, and it was the simplest of all. Stand in the center of the room for 1 hour. Just stand. No tasks, no pain, no torture. Just remain standing for 60 minutes. It sounded easy. But for someone who had been going for 71 straight hours, whose legs were damaged and exhausted, whose body was shutting down, it was perhaps the challenge of all. Walked to the center of the room and stood. The timer began counting down, 60 minutes. His legs started shaking immediately. His knees wanted to buckle. His whole body swayed. He locked his knees, but that only made the shaking worse. 15 minutes. His vision went gray at the edges. He was close to passing out. He bit his tongue, using the sharp pain to force his mind awake. Blood filled his mouth. He stayed standing. 30 minutes. Tears ran down his face, not from sadness or defeat, but from the sheer physical stress of staying upright. His muscles were cramping. His joints felt like they were grinding bone on bone. Every second was agony. 45 minutes. Started talking to himself again. Just 15 more minutes, 15 minutes. You have done longer, you can do this. Just stand, just breathe. Just exist for 15 more minutes. watched the monitors with an expression that no one had ever seen on his face before. Respect, deep, genuine respect. "He is going to do it," the drill sergeant said quietly. "The human is going to complete the gauntlet." Commander nodded. "And we must ask ourselves what this means. If one human can do this, what can humanity as a whole do?" 50 minutes, smile had faded. His face was tight with concentration and pain. He swayed dangerously. His eyes were half closed, but his feet remained planted on the ground. 55 minutes. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. In military bases across hundreds of worlds, beings watched a single human stand in a room. It should have been boring. Instead, it was the most compelling thing any of them had ever witnessed. 58 minutes, whispered to himself. 2 minutes, 120 seconds, you can count to 120, just count. He started counting, out loud. His voice was barely a whisper, but it was steady. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the viewing area was crying, had his hand over his mouth, and dozens of other humans were standing, holding their breath. 98, 99, 100. In the control room, watched the countdown timer match counting. 20 seconds left. 118, 119, 120. The timer hit 0. A bell sounded throughout the facility, had completed the gauntlet. For a moment nothing happened, just stood there swaying, barely conscious. Then his knees buckled and he fell, but he was smiling again as he went down. That same calm smile he had shown at the very beginning. Medical teams rushed into the chamber, but waved them away. He put his hands on the floor and with the last of his strength pushed himself to his feet one final time. "I walk out," he said. His voice was rough and quiet. "I walk out on my own feet." And he did, step by shaking step, walked toward the exit door. The medical team followed, ready to catch him if he fell, but he did not fall. He walked through the door and into the hallway where hundreds of recruits and instructors were waiting. The academy erupted in sound, cheering, roaring, clicking, buzzing in 100 different languages. The noise was deafening. Walked through the crowd. Beings reached out to touch him, to acknowledge what he had done. He nodded to them but kept walking. He had one destination in mind. Drill Sergeant stood at the end of the hallway. The massive warrior watched the human approach. As reached him, slowly raised his arm in the traditional warrior's salute, a gesture of profound respect. Despite his exhaustion, returned the salute properly. "You completed the impossible," said. "How? Why smile through such suffering?" Smile widened just slightly, because smiling makes them think it does not hurt, and that terrifies them more than strength ever could. Fear is a weapon, Drill Sergeant. I learned to weaponize my own endurance. Stared at the human for a long moment. Then, for the first time in his military career, he smiled back. "The gauntlet has a new completion. Number 13, the first human. Your name will be remembered, Han." "Thank you," Drill Sergeant said, "but I think I need to sit down now." His legs finally gave out, but the medical team was there to catch him. They carried him to the medical center, but even unconscious, his face still held that small smile. The next day, woke up in a hospital bed. His body was bandaged and hooked to various medical devices, and were sitting next to his bed. "How long was I out?" asked. 14 hours, replied. "You slept like the dead. The doctor said you suffered no permanent damage. Humans are apparently more resilient than anyone thought." Smiled. "You are already famous across the galaxy. The human who smiled through the impossible. There are hundreds of news stories about you." Tried to sit up and winced. "Everything hurts." "Everything should hurt," said. "You put your body through 72 hours of continuous torture, but you healed well. Human regeneration is impressive." There was a knock on the door. Drill Sergeant entered, followed by 15 other human recruits. "Han," said formally, "these recruits have volunteered to attempt the gauntlet. They said if one human can complete it, more can follow. Looked at and the others. They all had that same determined expression he recognized from the mirror. "You do not have to do this," said. "We know," replied, "but you showed the galaxy what humans can do. Now we want to prove it was not just you, that this is what humanity is." Over the next months, 12 more humans completed the Gauntlet. The completion rate for humans became the highest of any species in the galaxy. What had been impossible was now simply difficult. Updated the Academy's training manual. He added new sections on human psychology, human endurance, and human determination. The final section was titled, "Never Underestimate a Species That Smiles While Suffering." Was promoted to assistant instructor. His first task was helping to train new human recruits. On his first day, a young human recruit asked him a question. "Instructor, is it true you were smiling the whole time during the Gauntlet?" Smiled, that same calm, slight smile. "Yes, because I learned something important. When you refuse to show pain, when you refuse to show fear, when you refuse to break no matter what they throw at you, you become something more than strong. You become unstoppable, and that is what humans are. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not but we are the most stubborn. And sometimes stubborn is all you need to do the impossible." The recruit smiled back. "I understand, sir." "Good," said. "Now drop and give me 50 push-ups. Being unstoppable starts with being strong enough to back up your stubbornness." And as the recruit began exercising, looked out at the training field where hundreds of humans were preparing to prove the galaxy wrong about humanity. He had been the first, but he would not be the last. The impossible had become possible, and it had all started with a smile.